Today, remember, I told you it was going to be an AP practice day instead of the normal day that we would do on Friday. So what we're going to work on today are some of the skills that you're going to need for what I think are the lowest scoring essays so far. If you had to take a guess about what the hardest essays for you guys to write have been so far, what would you say they are?
Analysis.
Oh, no! Oh, you're all wrong. Argument, yes, louder in the corner, please. So why do you say prose analysis? Why? Is it because it's so distant? Is it because it's so far away? Like, it's been so long since we've done them, right? Oh, it's the only one you got a 3 on. But it was also the first one you wrote, right? Don't you think you're a little bit more experienced of a writer? We're going to come back to prose analysis at the very end of the year because I think that's the one you need the most sort of refreshing on right before you leave the class. But today we're actually going to work on the argument essays because we've been doing these synthesis essays so much that I want to make sure that you are clear on the fact that they may come at you with an argument essay. And so today we're going to work on a real AP prompt. It's not from a practice book, a genuine exam prompt. And we're going to talk about different strategies that you can use to sort of get all the dirty work out of the way, right? Because the hardest thing in an argument essay, even if you decided prose analysis is the worst, what is the hardest thing in an argument essay?
To find arguments.
You all decide. Yeah, you all decide, though. You have to go one way or the other, right? What takes you the longest? All right, it's finding the examples, I think, are what really sort of eats away your time, right? All that prep time, because you can read something. Remember when we did the Singer solution, right? And he said everybody should sort of give away their money, right? Everything over a certain amount should be given away to charity. I mean, immediately, weren't you on one side or the other? I mean, didn't you immediately think, hey, that's great, or immediately think, hey, that's wrong? But it was coming up with the examples of why. And I think that what you want to do whenever you're attacking this kind of question is you want to have some kind of strategy out of the way where you can go in and actually sort of do the easy stuff first, right? And so today we're going to talk about how to do a really quick introduction, going in and doing a really quick introduction, and then the more important thing, which is a counter-argument. Right? And the counter-argument where you go in and you acknowledge the other side, right? The concession toward the other side. So those are the two things that we're going to work on today. And like I said, we're going to do them with a real prompt. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a sheet. This will go into your notebook eventually. I went ahead and punched holes in it. Is I'm going to go ahead and give you a sheet about the various sort of ways you can start an essay. And you will be able to use this on your next essay. You'll be able to have this as sort of your notes. Motto, don't look so scared. You'll be able to have these on your next set of notes. So, let me go ahead and pass these out. Make sure everybody gets one. And you'll be using these today, so don't just sort of cram them down in your book bag. One, two, three. Give me fits. 1, 2. Thank you, Sally, for pointing that out. Very nice. Once again, my counts are off. 1, 2. Right? Everybody has one? Okay. So, again, we're going to work today on being able to just sort of jump into an argument essay instead of sitting there and worrying so much. I mean, when you guys would run out of time, I would notice that, your arguments and your reasonings were fine, but people would leave, like Madhu, sometimes you would like leave space for an argument or for an essay, like in your introduction, and there would be sort of blanks that you would leave, and it was clearly like, I'm going to go back and fill this in later, right? This idea of, oh, well, I know I can put other things in here. And what I want to do today is sort of teach you a way around that, because not only do you need this for the AP essay, what else are you going to need? Where else do you have an essay section? Your SATs, right? And now, which back in August, SAT, that's forever, right? I won't be taking those. You'll all be taking these next year, starting next year, if you haven't already, right? So the SAT essay, which is very much like, if you talk to anyone, it's just like an AP argument essay, right? They give you a prompt, they give you a quote, and they say sort of, what do you think about it, right? And why, right? That horrible question of why. And so you have the SAT, and then also next year as juniors, you'll be taking the Georgia High School writing test, which is almost the same thing. They give you a prompt, or they give you an idea, or they give you an argument, and they say go for or against it, right? Dress codes, you guys know the drill. You've done these with the practice writings, right? Dress codes, seatbelt laws, things about driver's licenses, where they try to sort of make you get really involved with the topic. So I think this will be a good thing for you to have. I want it to be a good thing for you to have. I hope it's going to end up being somewhat useful and sort of help you jump over the initial nerves of getting into it. So the first thing we're going to do is I actually want to look at the sheet that I just handed out to you. I think that one of the best ways to sort of make essay writing easy is to use model sentences, to go in and just sort of have templates almost, right, where you don't have to worry about, how am I going to phrase my introduction? How am I going to phrase my counter-argument? I think that there are easy ways to do this where you can sort of eliminate a lot of the time taken in actually crafting that sort of sentence. So what I've done here is I've given you a sample of different ways to both disagree and agree with the topic. Okay? So if you look on the sheet that I just gave you, the first thing we're going to talk about are disagreements. When you disagree with a topic, when they go in and they give you, they give you a quote, or maybe they give you a really big, long argument, right? Or they give you something like the Singer solution where there's an argument sort of buried into it. The first thing is, how can I jump in and immediately disagree with it? Why do we not like disagreeing with arguments? Like, what is it that's sort of scary about jumping in and disagreeing with an argument on an AP prompt or on any kind of test prompt? Why do we not want to? Henry?
Because there's already information in front of you, and you have to make your own that disagrees with it.
And so that's the scary part of it, right? Is actually going in and having to sort of generate it all yourself. That's exactly right. It seems like a waste almost, right? If you disagree, you have to do a lot more work. If you disagree. But then why do we like to disagree with the arguments when they sort of come before us, right? What's the easy part about disagreeing with an argument? Yasmin?
Because if it's what you believe, then it's easier to come up with examples than to just agree and use the examples that are already on the paper.
Okay, exactly right. If it taps into some sort of core belief, especially if it's something you are really against, right? If you read it and you're like, I don't believe that at all, then it's much, much easier, I think, just to go in, as you said, and immediately you can start generating examples from your own life or from, AP always wants what? Your life. What else? You're exactly 1984. Right? Actually, the prompt today talks about 1984. So yay, 1984. Always your life, your experience, your reading, your own understanding of the world, right? Or sort of some of the things that they ask about. So it is very easy to go in and disagree sometimes as well. So if you look through, what I've given you are some of the templates, because what I don't want this to be is I don't want I hate the type of writing that starts with I disagree with this, and this is why, right? There's no introduction. You just sort of jump into it. Remember that to get a high score on even any kind of standardized test, right, any kind of standardized writing test, you have to have form. You have to have structure, right? You have to have a decent introduction. You have to have a decent conclusion. You can't just jump in and say, well, all my arguments are there, but, I just didn't have time to write a good introduction, or I ran out of can my conclusion be one sentence, Mr. Jones? Right, that sort of thing. So you want to try to avoid that when it's possible, at least. Okay, so we look at all that. You can see all the disagreements. Now, let's look at the agreement sentences. We're actually going to do stuff with this. We're not just sort of going to read through the worksheet, right? But if you look through the agreement sentences, what is sort of piggybacking off of what Henry said, right? What is the appeal of agreeing with something, of getting a prompt and then deciding, yeah, I'm going to agree with this? What's the great part of that?
It's all information.
It's exactly. Say it again, Ian. Right, exactly. You can just it's there for you, right? You can totally build off just what they've already written, right? It's very easy to agree because you're essentially, on paper, you're just nodding on paper, right? It's saying, yeah, that's right, on paper. So, when, there's people, I think I've told you before, in college, whenever you buy used textbooks and you always try to look through the notes to see, what did the person who owned this book before, was it a smart person or not? And, sometimes you get those books and all the notes on the side just say, yes, exclamation point, yes, exclamation point. Well, essentially, that's what an agreement essay can sometimes turn out to be, right? I agree with this, this, and this because they said it, the end. And you end up with it. What's the downside of that?
Seem pretty one-sided.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Rahul. You do. You seem pretty one-sided. You seem like you can't explore all the options. What's the other one in terms of scoring? In terms of possible scores that you might get. What's the other downside of agreeing?
It seems too
They
easy.
might think that you don't understand what the prompt is saying fully.
Why would they think that, Yasmin?
Because you're just agreeing what they're saying without looking at the other side of the argument.
Okay, exactly, right. You're not going in. It seems like you're sort of not considering it. It makes you seem sort of, like you're not thinking it through, right? There's a fear sometimes, I think, that if you agree, it's going to look like you're not thinking it through, that you're just sort of going along with, yeah, whatever. I've got 40 minutes. I've got to finish this up. So there are some positives and negatives to it, I think, as well. But again, I've given you sort of a template. If you look on the sheet, I've given you just templates that you can use to go in and actually, sound intelligent while you're writing an agreement essay. And I think, the majority of you guys end up disagreeing with most of the prompts that we have because I think it's more fun to disagree for whatever reason. And, you get to be a little bit contrary, right? And sometimes you end up with maybe a tone issue, as Caitlin knows, on one of the last ones that we did, right, where not only you disagreed, right, but you disagreed very strongly, right?
Overly hostile.
Overly hostile, I believe was the exact term that was used, right? And you have to be very, very careful about that, but it's easy to do, especially when, like Yasmin said, if it's something if you're really against your Read the passage considering Postman's assertion that Huxley's vision is more relevant today than is Orwell's. Then, using your own critical understanding of contemporary society as evidence, right? What's great about that, where it says your understanding of society? You're in it. Yes, nicely said. But what don't you have to start coming up with? Books. History, right? Yay! No other school subjects have to be worked into this. This totally asks you to pull from your very own experience. So you immediately have that free rein to sort of run with it, your understanding of society. Write a carefully argued essay that agrees or disagrees with Postman's assertion. Now let's go through. As you need to, you may want to underline some of the things he says. Now remember, his assertion here is overall that Huxley more relevant than Orwell. We were keeping our eye on 1984. When the year came and the prophecy didn't, thoughtful Americans sang softly in praise of themselves. You guys weren't alive in 1984, were you? Yeah, not even close, right? Oh, man. All right. I was very, very old in 1984. All right, the roots of liberal democracy had held. Whatever else the terror had happened, wherever else the terror had happened, we at least had not been visited by Orwellian nightmares. But we had forgotten that alongside Orwell's dark vision, there was another, slightly older, slightly less well-known, equally chilling. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Contrary to common belief, even among the educated, Huxley and Orwell did not prophesy the same thing. A lot of people lump these books together, right? Because they're both about sort of dystopias, right? They're both about sort of society gone wrong, and people think, oh, they're pretty much the same thing. Orwell warns that we will be overcome by an externally imposed oppression. But in Huxley's vision, no big brother is required to deprive people of their autonomy, maturity, and history. As he saw it, people will come to love their oppression, to adore the technologies that undo their capacities to think. What Orwell feared were those who would ban books. Already people are starting to write stuff down. What Orwell feared were those who would ban books. What Huxley feared was that there would be no reason to ban a book, for there would be no one who wanted to read one. Orwell feared those who would deprive us of information. Huxley feared those who would give us so much that we would be reduced to passivity and egoism. Orwell feared that the truth would be concealed from us. Huxley feared the truth would be drowned in a sea of irrelevance. Orwell feared we would become a captive culture. Huxley feared we would become a trivial culture, preoccupied with some equivalent of the feelies, the orgy-porgy, and the centrifugal bumble puppy. These are all sports and things in the book. As Huxley remarked in Brave New World Revisited, the civil libertarians and rationalists who are ever on the alert to oppose tyranny failed to take into account man's almost infinite appetite for distractions. In 1984, Huxley added, people are controlled by inflicting pain, right? What kind of pain is inflicted on people in 1984? What do you remember? Rats in the face, right? That's all you got to remember, right? A rat in the face. In Brave New World, what else do you need for pain? In Brave New World, they are controlled by inflicting pleasure. In short, Orwell feared that what we hate will ruin us. Huxley feared that what we love will ruin us. Okay, now let's think very carefully about what Postman is saying, right? We're going to talk about what Orwell's argument is. That's sort of laid out for you. And Huxley's argument is in there as well. But in the end, what is Postman saying? Who's right? Orwell or Huxley? Huxley. He says you've got to agree with Huxley, right? That's his argument. So let's flip over to the back. If you look, I've given you a spot. Very quickly, take about 2 minutes. Rachel's already putting examples down. That's what I like to see. No, that's good. Don't apologize. I'm glad. Time, this is one of those things where as you read, you start throwing stuff down. Okay, in your own words, in that box in the top, in your own words, what is Postman's assertion, right? If you had to put this in your own essay, if you had to paraphrase this in your own essay, what does Postman seem to be saying? It's not just Huxley is right, but why is Huxley right? In your own words, explain why Postman thinks Huxley is right. Take about 2 minutes, and if you're stumped, we're going to come back around and get some people's opinions on it. But try to see if you can put it in your own words, the way you would work it into an introduction.
As Huxley's prediction further captures humans' inept ability to be captured within their own pleasure. To be captured within their own pleasure, right? Their inept ability to be captured. So in other words, not so big on the humanity, right? All right. So again, exactly. That's the idea here. Is that Postman is going in and he's saying Huxley is right because essentially we as humans are bad, right? We are lazy. We are what? What are other words that Huxley would probably throw at us?
Prone to distraction.
We are say it again, louder, Caitlin.
Inherently prone to distraction.
We are inherently prone to distraction, right? There's nothing we like more than being distracted, right? Nothing makes us happier than finding a distraction. So, and I'm sure no one in here can relate to this at all. All right. Now, now that you've paraphrased the argument, now here's what we have to do. We have to go in and you have to either agree or disagree with it. And I've given you, again, remember, you have very little time to do this. In the setting that you've got, chances are you've got less than 40 minutes to do this. Start to finish, right? Beginning to final product. You've got less than 40 minutes. So you've got to jump in and immediately first decide agree or disagree. All right, right now, right off the bat, agree or disagree. Who agrees? Who disagrees? Oh, a vocal minority. That's what I want to see, right? So again, yeah, this is one of those, remember I've told you before, a lot of these prompts are skewed one way or the other, right? They always expect people sort of to go one way or the other. All right, now comes the difficult part. If you look at the instructions, Madhu, the fear on your face, is it's there again. If your paper is yellow, you must, Lauren is frustrated. You must agree. If your paper is yellow, you must agree with Postman. You must say, yes, he is right, because. Okay? If your paper is blue, you must disagree with Postman. And this is where the difficulty comes in. But you do need to be able to think your way around it, right? So if your paper is blue, you have to disagree with Postman. Remember, Postman says Huxley is more relevant, right? So if you disagree, you're going to say Orwell is more relevant. Now, you disagree people who are weeping into your papers right now, who are upset because you have to disagree. Think about this. You've read 1984. Right, essentially, someone is asking, most of you have read 1984. Essentially, you are being asked to simply say, why is 1984 relevant to society, right? Why is it relevant to today's society? You can do this, and that's why the disagree is not as difficult. Let's start with, well, clearly, people think that the easy thing to do here is agree, right? Is the yellow, right? Everybody was very happy when you found out that the yellow sheet meant agree. So what are some ways, let's go over the assertion, right? Postman says Huxley's vision is more relevant because Huxley said it's pleasure that will do us in, right? So what are some of the reasons you would give for agreeing with Postman about Huxley? All right, Caitlin, start us off.
Society now with the TVs and the iPods and the internet on the phone,
right.
People have become needed to be entertained all the time.
Okay. All right. So. All right. That we need distractions, not just that we have it there, but it's like suddenly we need them, right? You know. So there's a moment of silence. Quick, everybody, get out your cell phone, right? Everybody, you know. Or hey, we're through. Quick, everybody, put in your iPods. So I think that's a really good one to bring up. Rahul, what's another one?
Video games.
All right. Explain. Video games are a very convenient whipping boy for this, but explain why.
Okay, because as the time progresses, the video game systems get more expensive. So
is this going to make me regret calling on you?
No, it's
All
not.
Right, I'm listening.
It's not. Okay, and so as many of us know that when you play video games, you get addicted to them, right? And eventually.
Do we know that?
Yes, you do.
Okay. All right. Everyone seems to be in agreement, so we're okay with it so far.
So it kind of adds frivolous detail to your life, and just sitting in front of the TV playing video games all the time.
Do you need it? Would you go along with Caitlin, where she said basically we end up needing stuff like this? We need things to sort of fill our time?
Eventually you develop a need for it,
I'm not sure. Have I? I don't know. Henry, have I? No? All right. Oh, I know. I've seen it. Hey, I watch TV in my downtime too, so I totally know. I need the distractions too, so I can see how that comes. So we've got video games. I think Caitlin brings up a great point with this idea of a need for distraction, right? That it's not just that it's there, but that we absolutely have to have it. Susan, what's another one?
Well, it's not the one that I told you about, but
okay, that's all right. All right, go ahead.
But it's about how with the internet and television and all that stuff, we have more access to information than we ever did.
All right, let's talk about this. Huxley apparently said, right, something along the line of that we're going to be drowned in information, right? And what does it do? If we have all this information, hey, that's great. We're an informed society. What's bad about it?
But we don't do anything about it.
We don't do anything about it. We're passive, right? Remember that word is actually in the prompt. It's actually in the piece of writing. It says that all of this glut of information, all these channels, all these sites that we can go to, that in the end, it's all just a blur, right? That we become very passive to it. And you would argue that that's the way contemporary society works right now. Mm-hmm. Your understanding of it, okay? Very good. Mary, another example.
Cars. We don't.
Why?
They used to walk everywhere.
Okay.
Now we're really lazy and we use cars.
Okay.
And it makes us fatter.
Now it becomes even worse, right? So this reliance on technology again, right? So all right, so moving away from, but again, there are other factors in there too. But this idea of no one even considers walking anywhere, even if it's like half a block, down the road. All right, Sally, another one, and then we'll finish up with Yasmin, and then we're going to move over to unless Ben, you've got a really good one. Yes, it's great, right? Okay. Sally, Yasmin, and all right, make it great. You've got time. Sally, Yasmin, and then Ben, and then we're going to move to the harder one, the disagrees. Go ahead, Sally.
People are more superficial now, and they want what is good for them at that moment.
Give me proof. Well, you can say it.
People overindulge, like obese people overindulge, like food. How much, like.
Why is that a superficiality argument, though?
It's what people want at that moment. They know it's not good for them.
Okay, now do you see how you can take that and maybe make it a little less confrontational, right, and a little less offensive, right? And you say, what's it about? It's about instant gratification, right? Really, that's what you're arguing. Exactly. That's what she was aiming for, right? Again, it's that tone. You have to control it. You have to be very, very careful about going in and sort of either putting labels on people or sort of generalizing about things when you're coming up with examples from society. And what do you do? Instead of talking about Iraq, right, like we are talking about with Suhani, right, instead of talking about Iraq, you make it about larger political issues, right, political divides in general, instead of picking like the one hot button issue, that you can make it something larger. Instead of just say obese people, right, Sally, you could actually go in and you could talk about just simply this need for people who just sort of need to have instant gratification. Right,
well,
that we live in a
tie that in with like fast food.
All right, with fast food, the ease of fast food. No, I think that's great. I think that's really your tie-in, the convenience. Although, is this Ben's topic? All right, then we're going to be quiet about it because we're going to come back. So Ben gets to say his. Yasmin, what did you say to agree with Huxley?
I looked at the quote. I took a quote out of the thing, and it said, "People will come to love their oppression, to adore the technologies that undo their capacities to think."
Then Mai's going to read her agree statement, okay? This is her introductory paragraph, so everybody listen, compare it to what you wrote, and again, remember that your job in an introduction is sort of let me know where your paper is going, but not necessarily, you don't have to elaborate on everything. All right, go ahead. Start us off.
Social critic Neil Postman asserts that Aldous Huxley's vision of the future is more relevant today than that of George Orwell's in his novel 1984. For the most part, Huxley's fears of a society ruined by hedonism have come to pass, while Orwell's fears of a Big Brother-like figure's tyranny have not. Postman is right in his assertion that Huxley's vision is more relevant because, as Huxley claims, we have become part of a trivial culture, and also the technologies that rule our lives are gradually taking away our capacity to think.
Okay, very nicely said, right? Again, you've got summary, you know what side she takes, and you know where she's headed with it, right, in a very broad way.